the difference between the original profile and the new one?
The original goes to your old stream key on YouTube.
Okay, and that should be the one we should be using because I don't think it's changed anything.
Well, it's not going.
Hmm.
It's not streaming.
I see it.
You see it?
Oh, he
I
does?
just got the notification.
All right. We
Oh,
got the whole.
maybe they're sending it to Mars and back again now.
All right. Let me play the whole music so we can be professional, kind
Okay,
of.
maybe we just got delays. Time dilation. Whee! If anyone has the live chat link, once that comes up, can they stick it in the private chat here on StreamYard? And I can see whether or not I can then copy that and find it that way. We'll experiment. Because if I can see the live chat, that's nice. And if anyone's hearing me, who cares? Scientists mail image only in little spurts. Ah, a good sign.
Take it away, RJ.
Hell yeah, okay. Theoretically, my voice is being heard from the talking, vibrating head here. We're still having teething pains on the damn StreamYard. I don't know whether or not we're going to be able to resolve that. So I'm trying to get stuff out really quick, just in case we get StreamYard issues, and then I can come back in later. First of all, let me start right off the bat. Thank patrons. Hendril and Eric and Speed of Sound, Suris, Zeshi, Travis Adams, Ian Cheng, Convert Me, Steve Early, Eat Neal, James Fitzwater, History Miner, Ralph, Apologia, Ben Simpson, Doranku, Todas Real, Christopher Johnson, who's a new one, Daniel, Steve Bauman, Marigil Pedos, Insects, Cool, Devin, Morton, Paul the Skeptic, Buffaloficus, Bo, Alex, and Paul, Legacy patrons, Jen, Jody, Mike, John, Keith, Andrew, Dyer, and then I can come back in later. First of all, let me Danya, Sun Sky, Ugly German Truths, Everett, Vincent, and Sewer. To get that out of the way so that I'm aware of the fact that you've been very, very helpful in keeping the old RJ flowing, even though we're not delivering nearly as professional.
Did he just get booted?
Yeah, yeah. I think he just got kicked out for a second. I might have to go and start using Google Hangouts for him and just screen grab from that because
Ah, crap.
see, that's what I thought. This is premature. He'll be back in a second. So Tornado Pelt, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Things are going well for me. I'm playing Kerbal Space Program without any loss of internet connection.
Yeah.
So, RJ, get with the program.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna have to I'm gonna see if I can do a Google Hangouts. Um and see if I can pull him in there. Because, you know, That might
Does
work.
that mean terminating a stream?
No, shouldn't. Let me see if I can do this. I'm a scientist. I will figure this out. I will figure this out.
Well, according to Orphan Red, you'd be a scienteur, not a scientist, because
Hmm.
you don't actually
Okay,
do
I think
science.
I'm back. Did the stuff on thanking the patrons come through?
Yes, mostly.
Okay, mostly.
I think so, anyway.
The legacy patrons, we may have missed them. Anyway, I was actually continuing work on the Jeanson reinventing Darwin thing, and I'll be putting links in after the video's done to what I've going on in there. He's going on about codon usage and how the third codon is not functionless. It could be to do with things that control the speed of messenger RNA molecules and so forth, which is all perfectly valid material. And I'm going to have about three or so big technical papers that are open access that I'll be putting on there that he cited from 2013. But then he pressed his luck a little too far because then he went on into an area that he shouldn't about how very old this variation is in biology. And so there'll be a Ginkgo paper from 2014 that I'll be putting in on that. And even messier when he brought up Eva Novoa's material on these cell contexts. And I'll be linking not only to that, but also to a 2015 paper she did, which is how all of this is knee deep in the early evolution of the genetic code. So this is an area.
All
Oh,
right.
not again.
I'm telling you. So I sent him a link to join a Google Hangouts, and so hopefully that he will see that on Twitter and join that instead. Hopefully he will see that message. If he doesn't, then I'm going to tell him on stream. So, how about those Jets?
You mean rockets?
Sure. We can talk about that too. I'm
So
not
yeah, I'm currently landing a mission in what appears to be mountainous terrain. Fun.
That's cool. I miss playing video games. I usually don't have the time for that. I've been
Mission successful.
I've been spending my day doing chemistry.
And minding your business.
I guess, man. I've been doing chemistry and meeting with people over the internet to talk about, their progress in the course. It's really nice to hear people say, brand new people, brand new students say, I was told to take your class because you remember so and so from this class that you taught. I'm like, yeah, yeah. They said, well, they said that you really care about your students, and they said that I needed to take chemistry from you. And I thought that was just like a really lovely thing to say to me. So it made my heart feel really warm.
It gave you the warm fuzzies, I take it.
It did, even though I've worked a 13-hour day today. Totally worth it. That people, and I have one student who took my General Chemistry 1 class, taking my Gen Chem 2. She said, she said my name. She goes, I waited for you. I waited a whole semester just so I could take your class, and I don't wait for anybody.
That is one of the highest compliments it is possible to get as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, for real, man. People are waiting for me. I book up, though. I keep a pretty packed class, and people get on a wait list. So it's really nice to know that it's appreciated. And I said, is my class too easy? And they're like, no.
Hi, again.
Oh my goodness. I'm not certain. JG in the chat says, has he called his device provider at all? I'm not certain that he has.
No, what he needs to do is sue them.
I mean, we've tried Zoom. Zoom doesn't work. Oh, there he is. He's in the background. I have to add him again. RJ.
Yay! I switched over to the direct connection. I did hear the thing about I should call my internet provider. They don't even have a physical store anymore.
Man.
So everything is very up in the air about all of that. Anyway,
RJ,
how,
I was just going to tell you really quickly. If StreamYards is giving you all kinds of problems, I sent you a link to join a Google Hangouts, and I can pull your video from there if you drop out again.
oh, okay. So I should shut this off and go back over and open up Twitter and you'll put a link in there.
Yeah, I got a link there ready for you. All you got to do is join if you
Okay,
drop out
I will
again.
be back shortly.
Okay. Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had me a drink about an hour ago and it went right to my head.
Is that a
Whatever.
real song?
Yeah, it's from Jaws. When they're
Huh.
sitting in the boat and they're drinking,
The
like at
more you
night.
know.
Yeah. Right after he tells the story, right after they tell the stories about all their scars, and I think it's Flynn. He sits there and he's like, he tells the story about the U.S. Oh, what was it? Where they all fall into the water. You know, they all, it was a super secret mission for World War II, and they end up just floating in the water, and they're waiting to be rescued because the ship was sunk, and so the sharks come and just start picking people off one at a time.
Oof.
Yeah, and so after he tells that story about all that, then they sing that song while they're drinking whiskey and shark hunting. I am waiting on RJ. I sent him a link to Google Hangouts.
Not
He's
funny.
having a problem with StreamYards and
That's
Zoom.
not funny.
And it feels like impending doom. It doesn't matter what I do. I'm gonna get this fixed for you.
With any luck, you will, anyway.
With any luck, I'll have this sorted out by next week. Evolution Hour. Oh!
Is not.
I'm still waiting on him in the Google Hangouts. Oh, gosh. So, do you know any good jokes, Tornado Pelt?
Well, I would. Except the last time I told one, I actually got told that the joke hurt.
The joke hurt.
Yes, because I had said, because one of my friends had actually said that an EF2 in a game had lost its satellite. So, you know what my response was? Oh, I didn't know it switched to cable.
Oh, God.
And they said that as an English professor, that joke wounded them.
Man. So I had a conversation today with somebody, and they were a very nice person, but they kind of delve into a little bit of the conspiracy theory side of things,
Oh no.
getting into the microchips implanted into your hands and stuff.
You mean it's a thing of the devil. Wah wah wah.
Yeah, that thing. But they at least wore a mask and they washed their hands. So I'm like, you know what? I can tolerate all of this other stuff as long as you're not like spreading your COVID juice on me. And then they said, hey, look, did you see that Google installs a COVID tracker? So if you're like testing positive for COVID, they're going to track where you are. I thought he was kidding. He was totally serious. And he showed me on his phone how there's like a setting, and which makes me think, oh, you tested positive for COVID. I'm really glad you're 6 feet away from me right now. But so I don't know. I had to look that up. So it's mostly true. They're actually putting in app trackers in with people who are testing positive for COVID-19. At first, I was like, sounds a bit like QAnon stuff, but nope, totally thing.
Now, at least he was willing to say, "Here, I'll show you."
Oh my gosh, I sent him. Okay, I'm gonna have to send him the link again. Okay, invite.
Hey, give them credit. At least they decided to show you.
Right. I mean, you know, and he did. He did. And so he does have some kind of tracking thing. I thought I sent him. Oh, sorry.
Now, what am I gonna do with this rocket? Seriously, I could just build a single man moon rocket and save myself a whole lot of problems.
You know, I have a new theory. Everything went to crap when David Bowie died. You know?
Alan Rickman.
That too. Alan Rickman was after Bowie, though, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah.
It was just a domino effect of sadness and despair.
And now we have this.
Yeah. We lost Prince. We lost Carrie Fisher, George Michael. All right, I've got RJ.
About bloody time.
Okay, I'm gonna reshare my screen. Let me screen grab him.
Icon.
Yeah, you're on. I can see
My
you.
camera is running.
Okay, let me get.
But I do not hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now, RJ?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm gonna add you over, and
hey, we'll find out if this works, even though I can't see anybody else.
you'll be able to hear in just a second. I'm gonna shrink
and I can keep my camera on, which makes me feel much nicer for my fragile ego.
You're so manly, RJ. I don't know what to do.
Absolutely, yes. I'm just. Oh, yes. I should start channeling Peter Wimsey and start saying "ain't a lot."
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to share the screen. And you should be able to hear each other here shortly.
Yeah.
I'll share it on one side. Okay.
If this format works, this would be much better than the StreamYard roller coaster of death.
The StreamYard BS.
Okay. Hopefully.
Yes, I heard him.
Okay. I know you heard RJ. RJ, can you hear Tornado Pelt?
Not yet. Is he speaking?
Yes, I'm speaking.
He's
speaking the English, dude.
Yeah, I can't hear him here.
Crap. All right. Let me see. Kit, is there a way to share sound on oh God.
Or you can just have Tornado be very quiet, and then he can interrupt as need be if necessary, and you can tell me that he's interrupting.
Okay, I'll do that for now until I sort out how to do the thing.
Yeah. And we'll see whether or not, the camera is still running and all that, which would be really nice to be able to run back rather than just talking head.
Okay, what's your question, Tornado?
Well, I was wondering, could we theoretically, and this is a big theoretical here, could we theoretically move this whole thing over to Skype? Because I know they have a way to share audio and sound.
Yes, but I've had problems with connecting the NDI for Skype onto OBS Tornado. So that's a big issue, but I can work on that.
We're all in a learning curve here, gang. And I'm at the bottom of the learning curve. Remember, I'm an old fart. This is all quite amazing. So if I can proceed with my rapid, how much of the thing that I had mentioned before about Jeanson and his stuff about Codon assignments, how much had that gone through before
basically nil.
Rolled over dead?
Very, very little.
Okay, I'll try to reprise that, and hopefully we'll be able to hold on this. That Jeanson in this section had a big footnote that went on for about a quarter of a page that was trying to show that the third codon is not functionless, rather than just being a redundant feature of a lot. And quote, it might play a role in controlling the speed with which a messenger RNA molecule is translated and the speed with which a messenger RNA molecule is degraded. Bum, bum, bum. So if it does stuff, by definition, therefore, it's extremely designy. Well,
Did we
he
lose him again?
cited a bunch of works from 2013. There's a Zhao
No,
paper
wait, I
and
can still
Zhu
see him,
and
but he's...
Stergakis, and I'll be putting the links in the video description after the video is done. And those are nondescript, very nice technical works. There's nothing in there that's technically a problem for him. So in my spreadsheet that I'm doing of him, I'm listing those as non-controversial. And by the way, at the moment, he's still running about 1.6 sources per page. And now it's up to almost a quarter of his technical citations he's been misrepresenting. And misrepresenting would be some of the stuff I get to next. There's a paper from 2014 by Gingold that was veering into more of the nuts and bolts of how these codon biases are occurring at that third spot. And it apparently goes really deep into the development of archaea and is not human specific particularly. We humans don't actually use this much. It's very, very rare, whereas in other organisms farther back on the lineage, it's very, very common. And he then brought up a 2015 paper or 2012 paper by Eva Novoa et al. From Cell that really he shouldn't have, because it was alluding to these pieces of information, and she did a 2015 paper, which so far apparently he hasn't cited. I'll be finding that out after I get through his bibliography or generating the bibliography. And it shows how this is all knee deep in the very early evolution of the genetic coding assignments. This goes very, very far back. So this was a subject he really shouldn't have brought up. This was a mistake on his part, because he's opening up a can of worms about codon assignments. Had Jackson been here, he could have done pinch hit on the section in our little tome, The Rocks Were There, where we have an appendix on the codon assignments and how those things evolved over time. This is going way back even before Luca. But this particular myth about these codon biases is coming in very early on, and also kicking into high gear as a quality control temper that is originating very, very deep in the archaea. So when I'm through and the video is done, I'll be sticking all of those references in. Now, the other so we can maintain no panic in the case RJ drops out again. I want to mention a bit about the part 2 of the show, which is about this video criticizing natural selection from 2020, Emery Moynal. And it was bringing up a bunch of stuff about foxes. And let's see if I can get my little notes up in here. Where did I put all my stuff? Oh, there we go. I used to have the space next to where my computer was for all of this kind of crap. Now I have the laptop sitting in that spot. So all of these things that I would normally have laid out, RJ gets into a mess on. Anyway, it was a creation podcast from, let me see, the 2nd of August, which was on, it said a very simplified experiment on generalized fox versus mice analogy on ecology, where a fox just eats 5 mice a year while the mice are proliferating. And so he's trying to work out on the fly how selection would supposedly work with living organisms. Couldn't he have used a spreadsheet? I mean, that would be really much more better on it. After 10 minutes of this kind of crap, he finally got into some of the real ecology, and he claims that it doesn't work in this simplified way of gene flow. And so he mentions chipmunks and squirrels and foxes and garter snakes. And he claims that you can't qualify fitness except down in generations. You can't do it in a lifetime. And then out of the blue, he says, some of you may be thinking right now, have you endorsed Randy Gialuza? No, but I'm not endorsing this ridiculous concept of natural selection and differential reproduction. Differential reproduction doesn't work. if anybody is watching his video, when I put the linkages up on that, they're going to be probably shaking their heads the same way I did. Is what the hell is he talking about? Well, Randy Giuliuzzo, who is now, by the way, the head of the Institute for Creation Research, is one of the big guys in the creation movement that can't stand natural selection being real. And he's been in a fist fight with some of the guys over in Answers in Genesis, who in fact do say, yeah, natural selection is kind of a real thing, and it operates even in a creationist context, but Guglielmo doesn't like that. So what this guy Moynihan is doing is kind of surfing on a debate that he doesn't bring up what the facts are. So anybody watching this video is just going to be completely at sea. So I tracked down all of his various source models here. And I'll be putting his references in. Oh gosh, there's dietary preference stuff and Fox on magnetic orientation when going after mice. It's a fascinating bunch of science material that was popping up as a result of ferreting out this stuff. Works on lion ecology, coat color. Leitner, by the way, over the creationism side, was trying to argue that natural selection and evolution couldn't account for the coloration of foxes and the like. But it turns out that I'm afraid they can. And so there's some material they're putting in from 2015 on the genetic adaptations in Arctic and red foxes and changes due to climate change, a 2018 paper. It relates to some genes, MCR1R and D. There's cysteine substitutions in that MC1R gene can suppress the white winter coat in Arctic foxes, generating the silver version. There's a 2015 paper on that. Fox domestication experiments saw the lighter dog coats, 2009 paper on that. And in the comment back and forth, Emery backed out further on the defunct Haldane mutation rate issue, citing an old 2004 paper that I'll be putting a linkage up to. The readers of Evolution Slam Dunk will be knowing we took some talk about the Haldane issue and how he had been misrepresented by creationists, and this guy's just repeating the same old stuff. Anyway, one little paragraph I really couldn't resist on this was about 18 minutes in, and he said, "Well, let's create a little habitat here. Create a little habitat on the board, a nice green habitat. So we get a nice big habitat here. After the flood, we have this group of heterotrophs, which are organisms that don't make their own food. They have to eat plants. They move into the habitat." And you have predator foxes come in, a couple of them, and they start hunting these guys. Oh, I seem to make a change in my little notes in here. These don't even have to be the same kind. We could have multiple kinds here. It doesn't matter. Point is, how do foxes pick their prey among their options? Obviously, foxes aren't going to pick something like a rhinoceros. How do they choose between a mouse, a rabbit, a chipmunk, a squirrel, and a ground-dwelling bird? How do they pick? It's very important to know that, isn't it? Because that allows us to tell what they're going to pick. Let's just say that we're in a nice, icy habitat, Arctic, and I couldn't even translate what the hell he said there. I listened to it several times and I couldn't clarify it. Think Arctic foxes here, right? So these foxes move into this habitat. Which ones are going to be the most likely to be successful in the habitat? Well, obviously, it's going to be the ones that are white, right? And he kind of goes on in that vague vein, but he never really connects it up either with the actual genetics that we know about or the creation model that doesn't get any more detail than he does. It was an amazingly vague bit on there, and we've actually got all this information on the evolution of these foxes.
No freaking way.
Ah, crap.
This is like the least demanding bandwidth here. I've used Zoom, I've used StreamYards, and I know Hangouts uses the least amount of bandwidth. And so I think I'm gonna have a come to Jesus talk with RJ and talk about his internet service provider.
Hi, have you heard about our Lord and Savior? Have you heard about our Lord and Savior's something other than your current internet service provider?
And we can kind of riff off of everything.
Hey, you're back.
Kind of.
I don't have a listing of a side chat thing, so I can't see what's going on in the YouTube thing. And That's meaning if I see how many people are watching and whether any questions in that are coming in that direction or not. But it was an example of these newer generation. The reason why I kind of pay attention to some of these more is because they're real recent apologists. These aren't the old fossils from the 70s and 80s that they're trotting out. This is a new generation of younger people, much younger than I am, who are very likely going to be the point people on creationism for the next 20 years. So it's actually probably a wise idea for various people in our networks to kind of keep track of these people, because they're either going to fizzle out or some of them are going to entrench and find a background support network where they're going to be players on the scene for quite a long time. So the more we have documented of it, just exactly how bad they are, the better. And speaking of how bad people are, I'll be putting in a linkage to a thing that took place actually in 2018 that I only found out about because a creationist lobbed it at me. There's a fellow, Matthew McLean, who lit into this nasty James Downard guy who had written this evolution slam dunk book on the reptile mammal transition. And I hadn't known about this at all. Not surprising, it's only had 100 views on YouTube. But McLean is a minor player in the current creationism field, and so another one to keep an eye on for the future. Anyway, it was just a doozy of a piece of misrepresentation. First of all, he complained that I was a bad writer. And of course, I'm just going, oh, shucks. I'm so sorry to you. Bring a sentence together. What's a terrible thing? But we'll be putting a comment on all of that great detail in volume 2 of Rocks, because he trips over the same problems that creationists do and generally argues that he doesn't deny any of the facts about double-jawed propanognaathids or anything else, but he just says that their limitation in creationism was that they were familiar with like foxes and cows and all of these barnyard animals. And so they didn't realize how clever God was to have created a broader range of organisms that they didn't know about because they were just looking at the post-flood recent world. But wouldn't there have been all of these organisms in the post-flood world coming off of the ark? That's problem number one. And problem number two is, how come evolutionists are good at anticipating these extinct animals? The propanognaathids were literally predicted in advance by Robert Broom down to their double-jawed format, which no living organism had. It was complete out of the blue. How come evolutionists are able to work these things out and no creationist ever is able to do that? This, to my mind, is an indication. It's another reason why their model isn't correct. Anyway, all the gang that are in the network on Twitter that we've got, Colton and Dan Stern Cardinale and Erica and all the rest, there was a talk a bit ago of having a viewing party to watch this McLean video, and they could see it. And of course, I have my notes about what I was saying about it, and I would still love to have that set up sometime because I think it would be a hilarious analysis. It's not a very long video. I think it's about like 20 minutes. It's about 50 minutes long. And it touches on an awful lot of stuff, but not in very great detail. And it'll be interesting to kind of interact on the fly with them on that. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Let's get a setup somewhere or other where we can do a Zoom meeting and have a watch party on that. So that puts us at a little bit past half hour. Is Tornado turning into a puddle over in there or what, Mel?
He's hanging in there. You want me to tell you who's in the side chat?
Oh yeah. Can you fill me in on that?
Okay, we got Brian Stevens. Benjamin Simpson says hi. Lisa for Truth, she's here. JG says what's up. I think it's Jen Zhu. Vandalia 1998.
I was in a clumsy thing on his show with Jackson just a few days ago, where we were talking about biogenesis and endosymbiotic process, and I was kind of the pimple on that one because Jackson did all the heavy lifting. He did a really nice summary PowerPoint presentation, and of course he wasn't limited by constantly dropping out of all of that, so that was very, very good. So hi there, Lamont. Thanks for having the old fart on there, but I thought it was a very informative discussion of an awful lot of issues to kind of all part of the process of immunizing people from being terrified of going into origins or bust issues. It's
Right.
that you got to recognize that it doesn't make the reptile mammal transition go away. It doesn't make religious arguments any better. It doesn't eliminate endosymbiosis or all these other biological processes. But we always have to be careful not to overplay the hand to think, well, we figured out how life originated. No, 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 we haven't actually done that. But we've made enormous strides in laying out the parameters of what went on. And then the thing that I, as a non believer, will point out, and have never gotten any pushback on this, zero of the religious books get this right. It's not just the Bible. Let's not pick on them. Every single religious document that has a claim about how things originated, what was going on in the beginning of things, comes up with wonderful little stories that can make good cartoons, but not one of them is talking about the time frame and the fact that it's early bacteria and that there's a long time before you get multicellular organisms and sexually reproducing organisms and then transitional critters and things that come out of the sea. And nobody gets that right. And you'd think if any of them were in touch with any divine designers, one of them would have gotten some of the information correct, but we don't get any of that.
Also, Stephen Bauman is in the
Yeah,
chat, as well as the idiot saying hi.
idiot. Yes, Steve and a couple others are patrons for the channel. I thank you very much. You are uber appreciated, and especially in this stressful time when we don't know what the hell's going to be happening over the next month. I've been inside, not even thinking about like mowing the lawn because we've got the smoke from the fires in the west. We don't even have fires in the immediate neighborhood of Spokane, but the air quality here is crap. Although it's thinning a bit, supposed to be getting some clarification and maybe some rain by the end of the week that will maybe help. But it's where you keep your windows and doors closed because it's like bleh, out there. And for people that have much worse lungs than I do, it's a bad time. My niece sent me an apocalyptic picture of the red sky over in Seattle, where she lives, and you've seen the pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge that look like a scene from a horror movie. No, it's weird stuff. So I am extremely appreciative of everybody who has still plunked down actual cash money to keep the old fart going here, and the fact that I haven't been able to do as smooth a transition shows for the past couple of weeks. I'm sorry that I'm very annoyed at the fact that I have to do that, but I'm plugging away. We're plugging away, kids. Um, and so the take home here is always about that bloody method. Another thing that just came up, there was another thing that was occupying me yesterday. I came in to a discussion that Jackson was having with Jonathan Sarfati, who was one of the big poobahs of the creationist movement, big wheel. And I didn't even realize he was on Twitter. Anyway, after a short amount of time, when Jackson was hoping that he might be able to cajole Sarfati to be on his show to talk, because he's had other people on. He's had creationists. He's had Fazal Rana, who's a nice, friendly guy, and others. But pretty soon, Sarfati was getting the impression that he was not going to have an easy tough of this, and he blocked Jackson. And so Jackson said, "I'm going to bed." Well, I continued, and for about another half hour was probing him on things and mentioning. Jackson had already brought up the reptile mammal transition independently of me, and so I'm going yay. And worse, Sarfati had made the mistake of citing the John Woodmarapp article. Again, shameless book plug. You'll find out all about that in the Evolution Slam Dunk. The upshot is it doesn't surprise me that Sarfati cited the Woodmarapp article. This was a thing from the Answers Research Journal from 2001, I think. And
Answers in
it's
Genesis, you
literally
mean?
the only thing that any creationist could have offered here. It's the only attempt to try to defuse the cladistic evidence for the reptile mammal transition.
Tornado
And
Pelt said answers in Genesis.
yeah,
God
well,
dang.
we have to remember the Institute for Creation Research and Answers in Genesis aren't a single monolith in terms of their doctrines, and they've got this divide over natural selection is one of them. The AIG set is starting to veer more in playing more acceptance of the geologic column. They've got a relatively small number of players are involved here. We got to remember that it's a small playing field. If you used a chessboard, you could literally put things down on the chessboard to represent all of the fact claimants in anti-evolutionism, which is only about 60 people, and of which most of them, about 40 some odd, are young Earth creationists. And then you've got about a dozen intelligent design advocates, and then you have the old Earth creationists represented functionally by Fazal Rana and Hugh Ross. That's it. And they're so peripheral nowadays that I really don't even pay too much attention to them. Virtually no, all of the arguments that get going aren't going to be typically invoking a old Earth creationism. They're either going to be riffing off of young Earth creationism, or they're going to be playing off the intelligent design stuff at the Discovery Institute, where you will be seeing those little dozen people retread. The thing about the young Earth creationists, and I've mentioned this in previous shows, but it's a good thing to remind about, is that the big famous talking heads of young Earth creationists are not their fact claimants. Unlike the intelligent design movement, where the Michael Behes and the Jonathan Wells are their fact claimants, so that their talking heads are the movement. That's it. Whereas almost all of the actual fact claimants, Jonathan Sarfati doesn't really do lecturing, he does writing. Andrew Snelling seldom appears in videos. He mainly writes material there. So the apologists you see, your Ken Hams, and then farther down the food chain, your Kent Hopkins, and all of that crowd, and then the internet metastasizers, the Standing for Truths, and the Raw Mats, and they have far too many acronyms. Too many of these people don't go by their actual names, you cowards, instead of actually being honest about it. Those generally are smorgasbord types. And Hovind falls into that category too. He's a smorgasborder. And by that, I mean somebody that's not actually got a prepackaged set of doctrines that they're rigorously following, but instead they have kind of a loosish model that then they scavenge around for apologetic blips that will reinforce their thoughts of the moment. And that's how you get into just weirdness. Kent Hovind goes and talks about Ron Wyatt's chariot wheels in the middle of the Red Sea, and he'll rip stuff off of Harun Yahya, like I showed in the video back in 2018. You tend not to get that level of smorgasbord parasitism when you're up at the ICR magazines and their journals, and then Answers in Genesis. They're a little fussier, although it also allows you to start seeing levels of controversy that you don't see in the public apologetics. If you just read their general publications and the general postings, the one that they'll put up, Answers in Genesis, for example, is much more active here than ICR. They'll be putting up linkages to kind of general summary stuff. And there will never be the slightest indication of any controversies in that. Whereas if you start reading the actual technical articles that are appearing, and it's fair to call them technical, these footnote,
Hey, RJ.
that you'll find at ICR and AIG. It's only when you start burrowing into the content and even sometimes into the footnotes that you start seeing them having fistfights over whether there is natural selection. Where do you draw the floodline boundary? Are any of the models valid? Accelerated radioactive decay, catastrophic plate tectonics, any of these various models that they come up with. There's actually huge disagreement over it.
I have.
You wanted to jump in there?
Yeah, I think Tornado Pelt has a question for you.
Yeah.
Aha.
Where would you say I lay on the evolution versus creation movement?
Where do you sit idly on the creation versus?
No, I mean where does RJ think I lay on the I lay, as in where does he place me on in the
How's that again?
I want to know where RJ places me on the gradient with the evolution and creation
on the thing. Creation something.
Okay, so RJ, Tornado Pelt wants you to tell him where he fits on the gradient of creationism versus.
Oh, well, Tornado is a religious believer. So he's in a different boundary layer. He would be much more in the line of biologos, where they are theistic evolutionists. And that's a completely different boundary layer there. But I'm very restricted as to the main category I use is anti-evolutionism as a generic that covers the whole field. And it's broken down effectively into two camps, which is the young earth creationists, and that's the one that I use as the generic term creationism. So when I say call somebody a creationist on Twitter, I'm not saying they are a generic intelligent design advocate. I'm saying that they think the earth is 6,000 years old and there are dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. That's what I mean by creationism. The intelligent design movement, that little blip over at the Discovery Institute, is the creationism light, where they don't bother about chronology, they don't bother about the age of the earth, they don't bother about that. They are generally opposed to common descent, although there are wafflers like Michael Behe and Michael Denton, but they don't make a big deal out of it. And they don't get to the point of an actual model. So Tornado is a religious believer, and he is perfectly fine with approaching the scriptures to work into his framework, but it's always evidence based, as far as I've ever seen, and as opposed to evidence exclusively in service of dogma. So if you have a thing with the Discovery Institute's intelligent design, they don't get close enough to a model to actually get into a lot of these issues. And the one litmus test that's been the most dynamic for me is to look at the systematics issue. Is, in other words, is anything related to anything? Is there any speciation going on? And if so, how much of the fossil record can be accommodated by that? That's a question that never occurs in the non-creationist model. The intelligent design model just literally never does it. There is no systematics whatsoever. Only in young earth creationism is there the baraminology movement, which is to try to figure out how many kinds there are, which is the boundary layer of created kinds in which you have speciation events of some degree or other. And of course, it's turned into a mess in terms of trying to work this out as a model. And I've gone into that in the books, and I've gone into that in various discussions here on the show. But it's the distinctive characteristic that differentiates those two. And as far as I know from Tornado, he's not disputing common descent. He's not disputing the existence of therapsids and things like that. I don't know too closely his opinions on what were the origins of our species and 300,000 years ago, and to what extent divine forces played a role in that or not. But I would suspect that we're not having much argument about the data field, whereas creationists, anti-evolutionists in general, really miss most of that data field. And so
I mean, I've never
yeah,
looked at the data,
jump in there,
but
Mel.
I accept it based on the evidence.
So Tornado Pelt says he's never looked at the data per se, but he's accepted it based on the evidence.
Oh, well, I'll tell you this, Tornado. Don't accept it without looking at the evidence. In other words, ground all of your views.
And we lost him.
I think he's cutting in and out. It's just he doesn't have to rejoin on Google Hangouts. He's probably still talking, and he's just frozen right now.
I mean, as far as my forte goes, it's not so much evolutionary biology as it is physics.
Well, mine is primarily chemistry and cells, you know.
And when I say I accept it based on the evidence, I mean I accept it based on the people who have studied it, as in based on Aaron Raw and his explanations of it, and RJ and all. They know sufficiently more than I do that I can say that if they're the guys who know how to do the thing, then that's them.
It looks like he dropped out.
God damn.
Yeah, I swear it's his internet. I'm going to have to set a fire under him and be like, "Hey, look, dude. Call your internet service provider and make them come out to your house." I'm going to have to make him do that. Maybe if I promise cookies. Do you think if I promise cookies, he'll be like, "Hey, yeah, I can totally do that."
Man, I really got to get some of these contracts.
You're
I got a whole
back,
bunch of.
RJ.
I'm back.
Hey,
Yeah.
RJ. But yeah,
Fortunately,
like I was
I'm
saying
getting a
earlier.
hang of the buttons on the laptop so that I can pull up the thing because I had to re-pull up Twitter and then reattach the link and all of that. I plugged in to the direct coaxial feed to the thing rather than trying to go through the Wi-Fi. That may have helped a bit. At any rate, we
Yeah.
got quite a little out of the way. But yeah, I am a devout methodologist, not a Methodist, and it's that method is everything. And I got that hammered into me in history course. This had nothing to do with the sciences, nothing to do with creationism, nothing to do with any of that stuff. It had to do, I mentioned him before, and it's a wonderful reminiscence on here. Professor Barnes, who was my historiography teacher, and he was this calm, cool, quiet fellow. He smoked a pipe in class. That shows you how far back in time we're talking about. This is the early 1970s. And he was a cross between James Mason and Jimmy Stewart. I don't think he ever raised his voice on anything. He was as amiable as all get out, but he was relentless in reminding us never confuse a primary with a secondary source. You would literally differentiate in your head all of that. When you're reading a book of history that's talking about the past, you're reading a secondary source and it's alluding to primary source information, ultimately, which are original documents and coins and archaeological excavations and monuments and all the rest that you get as the grist that forms the structure of things. And history has been a process of gradually improving how much information we have available and constantly testing our models of the past to try to work out the human stuff that's going on in the heads. What motivation did Richard III have? Was he a good guy or a bad guy or not? And what information do you present in that regard? And so when I go move over into the science field, it's like baby talk. It's simple. It's easy. Gosh, you got rocks, you got radioactive material, you got chemicals, you got stuff that isn't trying to cheat that. It's not putting propaganda up on a wall. It's a relatively easy thing. The scientists can have agendas and have blind spots, and everybody knows examples of scientists who just get their models run away with them, and they start running roughshod over facts and so forth and so on. That's because science is a human enterprise, but it's in many ways much easier to get over a lot of these things than you find in the world of history, where your very source data field is the production of human things, and it can have the illusions that human beings can put into it. So I don't view science and history as a separate thing. And Tornado and everybody who watches the show, I'm hoping is inculcating in that idea that your goal is to try to account for the data, as much of it as you possibly can. And that the worst sin in any methodology is where you are suppressing information that you can't account for. What we find with that abiogenesis issue that's so revealing is when you read or watch a video of some creationist talking about how we can't figure out how life originated, look at
Bullshit.
where they're getting all their information from. They're getting it from the regular scientists. They're the
Tornado
ones who,
Tornado Pelt said bullshit.
oh, which bullshit on what?
Bullshit on that we can't figure out how life originated. I think we can. It's just going to take a while.
He said bullshit on how life we can't figure out how life originated. He thinks we
Oh,
can. It's just going to take a
I'll
while.
I'll have we'll have to have a knockdown drag on that one because I'm of the view and I'm a complete naturalist and I suspect life originated naturally. I would be gobsmacked if it didn't. I would be really surprised. However, from a rigorous scientific point of view, we don't know how that happened yet. We have lots and lots and lots of the forensic details that suggest the parameters of what's going on, the formation of biomolecules, the development of lipid membranes, and we've got a lot of the pieces that we made an enormous amount of progress all within Tornado's lifetime. In the last 20, 25 years, most of this research has been done. But we've not yet reached the point where we can be QED, we've worked it all out in the way that we can say we've worked out the reptile mammal transition, or we've worked out at least 3/4 of endosymbiotic processes, things like that.
Or
There
at
are other
least,
areas
or
like
we've worked out
consciousness
how to
that
put
some of
things
that
in
may be
orbit.
unresolvable in principle because it's a qualia problem in that. So here I am. Here's theist Tornado, who is more confident on the origin of life resolution than I, non-believer, a materialist atheist, supposedly am. And it's because I have that stickler issue. And if you ask serious science researchers on the thing, if you were to inquire of Sostak and Sutherland and all the rest, I don't think you could find any of them who would be so bold as to say we figured it out. But we've got an enormous amount of progress made. And I use as a couple analogies. One is the fact that we don't know how lightning is formed in a thundercloud. That doesn't mean Zeus or Thor are viable alternatives. It just means that it's an immensely complicated phenomenon to try to figure out how particles segregate up in a cloud in such a way that they can produce a differential big enough to make a lightning zot. We know it's electrical, but how does that happen? Yeah, we're not really too sure about that. It's a tricky phenomenon to work out. And then the other one, the ultimate example of, boy, some things are hard and take time. Fermat's last theorem, which I mentioned in the debate I had on abiogenesis with somebody just recently. It took 400 years to figure out that Fermat's last theorem was correct. That's just a pencil and paper. It requires no chemicals, no experiments, no lab tests, no field work. You just sit in your room and
Forgive me
work it
if
out.
I'm
Some of the greatest mathematicians of all time, including, I think, Euler and Bertrand Russell and a bunch of others, took a whack at it. Nobody could figure it out
I think
until
Tornado
finally
had something. I think Tornado had something to weigh in on. What was that,
Oh,
Yeah,
Tornado?
good.
forgive me if I don't
Yeah.
know what this person's list,
Lay it
if
on Mel
whatever
so she can
the
lay it
last
on to me.
theorem
I feel
was.
like I'm communicating to somebody on the moon where we've got a
I'm
few
a
seconds delay.
human CB radio. What's up, Tornado?
Exactly. Yeah.
But
You
yeah,
are a
I
very
have to
nicely
admit I am
attractive and pleasant
completely
and
ignorant
tolerant
on that theorem
patient
of whoever
CB
it was.
radio,
I
Mel.
want to hear more of it.
Which theorem do you want to hear more about,
The
Tornado?
last theorem that RJ mentioned.
The last theorem that you mentioned, Tornado wants
Yeah,
to hear more about it.
Fermat's last theorem, I think
Mm-hmm.
it involved a formula for prime numbers, and that there would be no prime number, and I think it was prime numbers and exponents, or exponents with real numbers, something like that. It's like f to the x plus c to the y equals so and so, something like that. You can look it up. Anyway, Fermat was a mathematician, I think around 1700 or so, late 1600s, early 1700s, and he in his last book, in the margin, he says, I have a really wonderful proof for this, but it's too big for the margin. And that was it. And he died shortly thereafter. Well, and it was absolutely irritating mathematicians ever since. And for 400 years, mathematicians tried to prove Fermat's last theorem and could never manage it rigorously. And finally, some little mathematician, even it was a minor league one, had actually got very close to it and made a mistake in it, and then went back and corrected it, and ta-da, he'd done it. And this was like 1980s, somewhere 70s, 80s, 90s, somewhere around there. The memory fogs up, and it was in the last century. And the thing is that he was making use of whole new branches of mathematics that were unknown to Fermat. And so the issue is, yes, we now know Fermat's last theorem was correct. It's been proved absolutely settled. But did Fermat ever have, could there have ever have been a rigorous proof that was too big to fit in the margins in Fermat's day based on the mathematics that Fermat knew? And so I'm sure for another 400 years, people are going to be wriggling around to try to prove whether or not Fermat could have had a proof for Fermat's last theorem back then. And that you find out a lot in abstract mathematics, which of course is, in a sense, one could argue that's the only thing where you can actually prove stuff. There's no matter of opinion in mathematics. 1 + 1 is not an issue of debate that it's equal to 2. Sorry. And so, and there are other things, if in religion context, for example, the old cliches that you have, can God make a rock too heavy to lift and all that? I have a better one. No God in any universe anywhere can do a root formula for a fifth-degree polynomial. It's impossible in principle. And if you know what, your quadratic equation ax plus bx, a squared plus b plus C equals 0, something like that. So that's a second degree polynomial. You can the quadratic equation minus b plus or minus the square root. I've forgotten the thing on it. It's a relatively small formula. That's the root formula that will tell on a curve that's a quadratic equation if it crosses the x-axis or not, and if so, where. And you can calculate just by plugging in those numbers exactly where it crosses the x-axis or not. Now, there's a third degree polynomial, a x cubed plus b x squared plus cx equals 0. That formula, there's a formula to determine the roots for those, and it's a way bigger formula. And then for a fourth degree polynomial, it like fills a blackboard. It's a huge little mother. Well, the moment you switch to the fifth or sixth or seventh degree polynomial, bam, you've just crossed a threshold into unprovability. That, in fact, I can't remember when the mathematics was done on it that proved it, but in fact, it is impossible ever to get a root formula for a fifth degree or higher polynomial. And gods can't even do it. So that's one that you can put up as a counterpoint to e to the pi power plus 1 equals 0, which Euler thought was a sneaky way to try to prove God that way. Anyway, that'll give Fermat, that's Fermat. I've forgotten what his first name is. Wonderful mathematician. All the mathematicians are absolutely fascinating to study. Anybody that has an interest in the philosophy and religion will bump into mathematicians all the time. I mean, Pascal's wager. Pascal was a mathematician. And you get Leonard Euler, who was also very religious. What's his name? Uncertainty guy. My memory. He's also very religious. And had the better of the argument between him and Bertrand Russell over whether or not you could have an absolute mathematics where you could prove absolutely everything. God, I've forgotten his name. It's going to be very Kurt Gödel. It is umlaut. If you want to have a horrifically big way of occupying your quarantine time, get Douglas Hofstadter's old book, Gödel, Escher, Bach, An Eternal Golden Braid, which I think was written like in the 1970s. It's a great big book, like the rocks were there, and is just a mind blower of a work because it's talking about Gödel and Max Escher, the guy that writes the stuff with little figures walking around staircases that does all those pictures, and Bach with his complicated fugues that eat each other's tails and all this stuff. And along the way, is talking about DNA and ant colonies. Do they have minds or not? And it's just an absolutely mind-bogglingly fascinating work that even though it was written 50 years ago, is still thought-provoking in my view. And it's a biggie to go into, but it's deliciously interesting because he's basically bumping into a lot of these things that are likely unresolvable issues. They're at the edge of our ability to resolve them in a scientific way. And so they're going to be issues of philosophy. Like, can an ant colony, if you can have a brain composed of just chemical reactions, squirting little calcium molecules around inside of a meat computer, and yet you can listen to a Beethoven symphony that way, and even if you're Beethoven, write one. How does that work when the pieces aren't conscious? Well, could that happen with an ant colony? Could there be a meta mind that is composed of all the little pieces of the ant colony that functions like a mind, even though the individual components aren't a mind? And it's in fact probably an undecidable proposition, but boy, it's a thought provoker and certainly something to make an interesting science fiction story. So we're past the hour on that. Are there any unanswered questions knocking around in the live chat that I can't see?
There was, let's see, there was a question about from Don Giovanni. What does everyone think
Oh,
of this soft panspermia argument given that simple organic molecules have been detected in space? For example, large clouds of alcohol near nebulae.
Yeah, I'm of two minds on it. The romantic in me is just exhilarated by the prospect that you could have early living forms generated in space rather than on a planet. That are we just being parochial in thinking, well, you got to have a little rock with an ocean and an atmosphere to have life. You can't do that out there in that cold wasteland of eternal darkness. Oh, good. Bleh. But maybe you can do that
I mean,
in
we've
the
found
cold
amino
eternal
acids
darkness. So the
in
idea
meteorites.
that life could be formed in many odd ways, and if it's durable enough, they keep on finding out how some of these things don't necessarily break down easily, that there could be things inside of little meteorites that hunker down. We know even with organisms we're familiar with, some of them, like tardigrades, can just go into mode, and then you go a really long time and thaw out and go, there we go. And
Tornado
so,
Pelt had mentioned that we have found amino acids in various nebulae.
No,
oh yeah,
meteorites.
yeah,
Oh,
amino,
sorry, meteorites.
and
My
the
bad.
amino acids that are the commonest used in living systems are the easiest to synthesize and are the most easily found in these space environments as well as on the Earth. So it's not a matter of can amino acids
Name that tune. Oh my goodness. He's frozen again.
that it may be, oh, I'll put a great big may about that, suggest that there might be some sort of bacterial thing living in the atmosphere. And if that turns out to be the case, holy moly, will this kid be amazed and delighted. I'm not holding my breath on it. So, although there's the romantic in me, is fascinated at the prospect of panspermia. And this would be undirected panspermia. Directed panspermia, where alien beings send out seed pods, to seed the universe and that, yeah, I suppose. But it doesn't explain where they would come from. The whole notion of the panspermia idea is that living precursor systems could generate wildly in lots of different contexts. So we can't assume that some of the stuff might not have been caking in from stellar nebula. We keep on finding out new information. There's some circumstantial evidence that's just popped up that there's a dark star companion of what we may have been early on a binary system that's now gotten spread out into interstellar space and was really hard to locate. And yet it's got some little gravitational nudges on the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt and all of that suggest there may have been one. There's just a recent paper on that subject. And since, given how ubiquitous multiple star systems are, Alpha Centauri has three, Proxima and Alpha Centauri A and B. And that's our nearest neighbor. That doesn't surprise me. So remember JBS Haldane, who is an old biologist who was frequenting in the period from 1930 to 1970-ish, who said, I'll use the original English there. Not only is the universe queerer than we imagine, it is queerer than we can imagine. And I think that's probably a good guideline to go by. So on the panspermia thing, it's like Bigfoot. I'd love it if Bigfoot were a remnant Gigantopithecus. Odds are against it, but gosh, it would be amazing if it were true. So I have no philosophical opposition to a panspermia thing. And the other thing that makes panspermia arguments so iffy and tantalizing is we don't know precisely what the parameters of living systems are. Is the only life that can exist the stuff that we see us having? DNA, RNA molecules, stuff made out of proteins, as opposed to stuff made out of crystals or stuff made out of something else that we don't know about because none of us use it. Um, uh, just as a thought provoker, and because it's a rippingly good movie, the old 1970 science fiction Andromeda Strain, which is about the discovery of a very dangerous crystalline-based organism from space that is just a taut, ingenious thriller. It's a Michael Crichton novel. Robert Wise directed it. It's got a wonderful set of casts. It's a really neat movie. And if you haven't seen that, don't bother about the TV version that was made like 20 years ago or so. That was just ghastly bad. It was just junk that. But go to the Robert Wise's 1970 film on that and use that and read Gödel, Escherbach, and some of these other things as some thought provokers. Not to say, oh gosh, well, we got it all settled, life came from space, but just as thought provokers to open the mind that yeah, we don't know everything. Still don't know. Look at all the dark matter in the universe. We don't know why the universe has an imbalance of where it's matter and all the antimatter matter. How much antimatter was there to begin with that got disintegrated because it turned into energy. And what exactly is this dark matter that can have a gravitational effect but not yet be mass-like? And so there's just too many unanswered questions on that. And when we figure out the answer to that, we will know a great deal more, but probably nothing about whether you should use mayonnaise on your sandwiches. And with that, I think we've probably gone past the hour. I thank Mel that we've managed this way at least to have an uninterrupted, virtually uninterrupted show where I could actually keep the camera on and not just be a blank talking head. Maybe next time we'll be able to work out more to get the things so that I could actually hear when Tornado wants to jump in and have a question and
I
all
have
of
some
that. We'll work on all of
ideas.
that.
I have some
Yeah.
ideas, and I'll work through those this week. So
Yeah, I
hopefully
must
we
say
can.
this platform is running quite smoothly, though, isn't it?
It is for you. It certainly is for you. It's fine on my end. It's just
Yeah.
trying to get you to hear the other people, I think, is the only
Yeah,
issue,
yeah,
and
because I
I
I
can do that.
like that a lot. That feedback. And there's another reason why I like to be able to see the live chat because there are
Mm,
things that come along in there where I go, ooh, and if C Brown pops up once in a while, I like to just say, oh, well, there you go, and
right.
allude to that. It makes a better operation. But this was better than some of the previous ones in there, and I owe it. I will not give up on you patrons who expect the RJ to blather on for at least an hour every week. Damn it.
Well, it's pretty cool. I'll sort out issues. I think a virtual microphone should be able to patch over to where you could hear the other one. I think I'm going to work on that. I can
Yeah, we'll see.
put
We'll
some
tinker with
feelers
all of
out.
that. And once the show is settled in, then I'll be able to go in. Before, what I would do, I would put my linkages up and plug them into the YouTube thing preemptively, and then I didn't have to worry about it. It was all settled. Well, they rearranged their system where that isn't working. So that means I have to come in after the thing's already done and put in all of that information. But yeah, that means I would normally just delete all of the material in my little word processor file where I would keep track of all of this stuff, and because it's there on the video. But now I have to reverse that, so I have to keep all that information available. All of this stuff that I have up in the big box is the stuff that I'll be then copying over into that after the fact, and then I can delete it and then move on. So there we go. Thanks everybody. Thank you again, Mel. Thanks, Tornado, for you and Mel filling the little brief gaps when I turned into a pumpkin. And we
Thank
will
you.
hopefully be at least this smooth next week.
Awesome.
And pull these clouds. We'll put on the commercial for rocks.
The rock creation. Amazon rating 5 stars. Before that, the magnum opus of countering anti-evolutionist arguments, coup de grace. Systematic answer to the unscientific nonsense of creation. Very thorough rebuttal to younger creationists and presentation of current science. Powered by Scientist Mel Productions.
And let me know when we're off here.